Molded Galaxies by Sam Illingworth. Across dank, shaded habitats of cosmic intent, specks of light flicker into life. Emerging from chaos, filaments of matter weave their nets. Unclassifiable structures that stretch across the emptiness as ethereal webs that glisten in the dewy dawn. Barely trodden paths glow faintly in the dark. Celestial causeways that trace the congruence of our galactic ancestry. Their hidden alleyways conspicuous by the mass of what we cannot see, the weight of their neglect calling to us from across the void. Blindly, we turn our eyes to the sky, searching for breadcrumbs between the pathways, oblivious to knowledge that has always been with us, the map of our universe, embraced within a single cell.
Welcome to The Wandering Naturalist, a Three Rivers Park District podcast. I'm Angela, she, her, a wildlife biologist with Three Rivers Park District.
And I'm Brandon, he, him, an interpretive naturalist with Three Rivers Park District. Three Rivers Park District manages over 27,000 acres of parks on lands that are the ancestral and contemporary homeland of the Dakota people in suburban Hennepin County and surrounding areas.
So join us as we wander from park to park and discuss your stories of the past, the nature in our present, and how they have shaped our parks.
Come wander with us,
The Wandering Naturalist.
All right, so that was a poem by Sam Illingworth. You can read his poetry at thepoetryofscience.scienceblog.com. And this was specifically written for him by one of my absolute favorite topics ever. Really the topic I've been most excited about this entire year. You know what? Actually, I think I like it so much because there are things in Star Trek like it, but it is slime molds. I'm so excited for slime molds. I think they are amazing. And I know this is traditionally our Halloween episode, and we traditionally play in a spooky part of the topic.
Scary.
We do kind of scary music at the beginning.
Slime can be scary.
I know, like living, crawling slime sounds so spooky, but I just think slime molds are so amazing. I can't get spooked. I just get too excited. And so I'm really excited about this. I remember in college hearing about slime molds for the very first time and just being immediately enraptured and confused at the same time.
That's a good way to put it.
It's
I'm still confused.
Right? It just doesn't make sense. It's living slime that crawls along the forest floor looking for food. Something without a brain that can think and learn. A single-celled organism with one species having been measured up to 44 pounds. A single cell weighing 44 pounds. It's inconceivable.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And speaking of Star Trek, it also makes me think of Armis and Tasha Yar, which I'm sure most people wouldn't make that connection.
You know, you make me do crazy things for this podcast, and I saw this in the script, and I was like, I could just be like, I'm assuming it's Star Trek, like even before I finished the sentence, I'm like, I'm going to assume I'm going to type these names in and add in Star Trek, and it'll explain it. So happy for you, I learned about these two characters. I'm so happy.
I know. It was like a devastating episode because we lost Tasha Yar.
Yeah, so I learned about all the drama around this character and
the behind the scenes
ending and why she left and that she was a fan favorite. So kudos to you getting me to Google Star Trek stuff.
Maybe our listeners will too. There is another Star Trek connection. I remember one episode actually had something called a primordial slime mold, because it's even more intense. And so actually for a long time I kept calling slime molds primordial slime molds. I was like, is it primordial slime mold? Like, no, that's Star Trek. I got to go back to slime mold.
So there is a little bit of that sci-fi kind of creepy vibe that matches with October.
Yes. And so it's why we chose it this month. And also I've been dying to do slime molds just for years on the podcast. And I think I was especially inspired after last summer, the summer of 2024. Because it was just amazing. There were slime molds everywhere. I saw more slime molds the early summer of 2024 than I have ever seen in my life. I even, over the course of a couple of days, got to watch a slime mold crawl across a log and eat mushrooms.
Yeah, you posted it on social media. It was really cool.
It was so cool. And just seeing these like huge mushrooms just over a couple of days get decomposed as the slime mold spread out. Oh, it was like a life dream come true. So how about you, Angela? Do you have any slime mold thoughts?
No. I have never thought about slime mold.
So I'm just pulling you along.
Yes. I mean, I love like fungi is where like my brain initially went. And I think like hiking through the woods, I would see something that was like, oh, gross. What is that? Did like someone vomit on this log? And then realizing like, no, it's slime mold. And then I think my curiosity was like, cool. And then I just moved along.
Well, that is my favorite name for a slime mold that you'll see in mulch often. I see it around Target a lot, actually. In their mulch, it's dog vomit slime mold.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, 'cause some of it does look kind of funky.
So maybe I'm along with a lot of our listeners that I don't know much about slime mold. I know you're enthusiastic about it, and I'm here for the ride. Let's do it.
Well, and that's okay, because as much as I'm obsessed with slime molds, I really don't understand them. They defy my expectations at every turn. I mean, the crawling slime mold I saw was several feet long, but I don't understand how this several feet multi-branch thing, like it almost looks like arteries and veins and capillaries in a body branched out. But that's only a single cell, and I don't understand that. They can learn and they can plan. They solve problems like how to build highways faster than humans can, but they don't have a brain. How can they think and learn without a brain? There's so much about them that amazes and confounds me. So luckily, we had some experts willing to talk to us today. I was going to say,
how hard was it to find experts on slime molds?
Honestly, the experts I reached out to were so excited right away to talk about it.
Yes.
But it was hard to find it because there aren't a ton of people that are publishing a lot anyway around slime molds.
Yeah.
And slime molds, I think, are just like, we used to say they're a fungi. Now we know they're not. Yeah. And so it was a little bit hard, but I was able to reach out to some Facebook groups to find some references and others.
I looked up all of our guests, and everyone should be really excited.
Oh, they're awesome. Our first episode, we will be talking to the regular slime guy, Matt, about what makes a slime mold a slime mold. As you can tell from his nickname, he loves slime molds, and he's really going to help us make them a little bit more conceivable. In our second episode, we're going to talk to Dr. Narosho Murigan about the research she has done regarding how slime molds think and learn without a brain.
I loved a video, like it was a slime mold navigating a maze.
Right?
What?
And they can learn through the maze and remember. Finally, Dr. Lacey Johnson is going to join us in episode 3 to discuss how creative writing about topics like slime molds help connect people to science. So are you ready to get slimed?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I'm ready to get slimed. It's going to be awesome.
Is this like Nickelodeon slime?
I wasn't quite sure. Like, am I referring to Double Dare? Or am I referring to the Ghostbusters? It could go either way.
It could go either way.
Yes. We are excited because today we are joined by the regular slime guy to get a crash course in what a slime mold actually is. Welcome, Matt. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, I would call myself an amateur. I don't have a degree. I don't work in science or anything like that. I'm just curious. And I spent a lot of time reading and going out in the woods and, talking to people and etc. It's like I would say I spend like the majority of my time, free time, looking into reading about slime molds, talking about slime molds.
Yes, you seem really passionate about it. And actually, I'm really excited to talk to you because you're not a scientist studying it. I think it really shows how people can become passionate about these things and really learn so much about it. And I know from talking to you, I've already learned a lot about it in some of our pre-interviews. I am curious, what sparked your passion for slime molds?
I saw a particular slime mold called Tubifera ferruginosa. It's usually called the raspberry slime mold. It's pretty big as far as slime molds go, so people tend to see it more often. But it's also, it depends on your area. I don't actually see it very much at all. It's very rare for me to find it. But some places have it a lot. And it usually likes pine, like mossy pine. So
Okay.
if you're like looking for mossy, if you're looking for it, that's where you would probably want to look. But anyway, so I saw that slime and I thought that it was one of those dangly mushrooms, like a lion's mane or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like red. It was like kind of translucent red. And when I looked it up, I found out that it was not a fungus at all. And also I found out, basically because of reading about it, that there were like more kingdoms than I knew about.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting. And that's probably what triggered like the majority of my kind of search through learning about what they are. When you read about them in like articles and stuff online, a lot of times they'll say stuff like it's not a plant and it's not an animal and it's not a fungus. And usually there's a sort of like a vagueness when people talk about it, but it's not vague at all. It's just another kingdom. It's another branch. It's actually right next to animals and fungi. And those three are kind of like the non-plant side of the evolutionary split. And then there's some kingdoms on the plant side where all the algae is and so on and so forth. So that was very exciting, but also they just look crazy. Like when you look them up, it's just like, how did I not? They're very small, so that's how you miss them. But it's like once you've seen them, you're like, how could these even exist at all? Just out in the woods, you know?
Well, and I think some of their names really show how crazy they are. Like, I think I saw Carnival Candy Slime Mold last year, which, again, incredibly tiny. You got to look. But yeah, it like looks like this little bit of candy you might get when you're at a carnival on a stick. And chocolate tube lipstick slime mold is one I saw. And so I think like the names really show just how
Who's
unique
naming
these
things?
get. I don't know, but I want to name
tell
them.
you that they're not. Some of the names are inconsistent. I think that's standard across all of science. Is that you get
Yeah.
you get common names which just cover like a lot of ground, and sometimes it's more confusing than helpful.
Yeah, that's for the scientific names.
Yeah, well, both ends of it are confusing in their own special ways. But yeah, I don't know. The names are weird because they're weird. I think like when they get big enough to notice them, they're like, it looks like there's a problem. Like it looks like something bad happened.
Yeah.
And so I think that it inspires a certain reaction, and that's why you get dog sick and dog vomit and so on and so forth. Some of them are very pretty though, like the carnival candy one, but that one's very small, so you have to be looking for it.
Yeah, it was incredibly tiny, but again, it was amazing once I finally saw it. Do you have a favorite fact about slime molds you'd like to share?
You know what I'd like to do is you said a whole bunch of stuff, like you were like talking about stuff you didn't know. I really just want to answer all those questions.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get into that.
Like you specifically said, how is something that big a single cell, right?
Yes.
It's a very interesting answer.
I'd love to hear it.
I guess the short answer is that there's like tiny little molecular machines inside of our bodies and all animals' bodies that operate our muscles. It's called the actomyosin system. There's other features of our muscles, but that's like a part of the process. And it basically like contracts mechanically. And slime molds also have this, but they use it in a different way. And they use they're like fibers and then kind of a little machine that pulls the fiber quickly together to make muscle-like movements happen and or to tighten things up. And what they do is they use this system to move, but they also use it to kind of gelatinize the outer parts of the tubes, the peripheral areas of the tubes. So even though they don't have like a cell wall, and even though they don't have a shape that's consistent, they have like a dynamic system, basically a skeleton.
I want to talk about the actomyosin a little bit more to try to understand it. You're saying it's like a thread with things that pull things together. And I think it's worth remembering that even if something's a single cell, cells are made out of stuff. Would it be, this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but in a way, could we think of a slime mold being like my shirt and the threads that make up my shirt being what'd you say it was, the actomyosin? And all of those together kind of help create the structure of the slime mold?
Yeah, it's almost like it's not an ectoskeleton because it's underneath the membrane, but it's similar to an ectoskeleton in the sense that there's nothing where all the cytoplasm is. It's all moving freely, like exactly what you were imagining, through basically tubes, arteries, or whatever. It goes through all of them, and nuclei from one end can end up on the other end. Anything can. Mitochondria can go all the way through. It just moves all around. But around the outside, to us, it's not very stiff, but from the perspective of a single cell trying not to collapse, it's substantially stiff because of the actomyosin. I think of it like muscles, honestly, because there's also, it's more complicated than this, but there's two major types of skeletal molecular machines. And there are all the slime molds in the amoebozoan kingdom, which is that kingdom right next to fungi and animals. All of those slime molds they hatch as little mononucleate single cell microscopic amoebas, like what you would think of as an amoeba.
Oh, did you hear the loon?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what?
There it is.
It's for amoeba. What exactly is an amoeba?
It's basically an organism that doesn't have like a shell or a cell wall or some kind of rigid structure around it, so that it's able to change its shape at will. And frequently, amoebas eat and move by kind of just creating extensions of their bodies called pseudopods. And there are basically three types of amoebas. One of those has microtubules in its hands, and those I think of more as like bones. So I think of the actomyosin system as like muscles and microtubules like bones. It's not a perfect metaphor, but microtubules are larger and they're more rigid. And so on the planty side of things, there are lots of amoebas that may surprise you, but they tend to almost exclusively have these kind of thin, stiff microtubule-based appendages, whereas the amoebas in Amoebozoa I sometimes call them floppy amoebas, because they have microtubules in the center as a skeleton, but all of the parts of them that move and that grab things and that's all actomyosin, and so there's no microtubules in it. So it's kind of like they have, like boneless limbs that are just like flopping about. And then there's a third type of amoeba, which I don't know, there's no reason to get into it, but it has no microtubules at all. So I usually just call them boneless amoebas.
I like it.
And all amoebas pretty much fit one of those three molds.
Okay. And so if we're talking then about the amoebas that are slime molds, and I'm trying to understand what they actually are, they're a single-celled organism that have the actomyosin that's like a muscle that helps them move, these microtubules that reach out and create a little bit of...
No. The microtubules stay in the center in the amoeba.
Oh, they stay in the center. Okay.
In the slime molds. Yeah, it's the planty type amoebas that have microtubules.
I see. Okay.
Hands. The same actomyosin that is making the tubes when they're very large stiff and allowing them to move around and kind of coordinating all of their movement in general, literally pumping the tubes like so that the fluid moves back and forth. All of that is somewhat equivalent to the system when they're just a single amoeba moving around. But I don't know for sure, because this is not, I've looked into this and it's hard to find answers on this kind of thing. I don't think that a plasmodium has microtubules. I think that when it gets large, it moves into a purely actin system. Okay. But this is like deep stuff that I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm reading about it literally as an amateur, and the strength of my interest is the only thing that is dragging me through it.
And honestly, looking for scientific papers sometimes on this information is really hard. I tried.
Oh, it is. Cool.
Now,
and the terminology differs from paper to paper. So it's like sometimes you're like, I don't even know what that means. What is a hypocolumella? I don't even know. And
there's just not that much out there either.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that struck me about slime molds is, even though it's a single-celled organism, it has hundreds or thousands of nucleuses once it gets to the larger and larger size, correct? Mm-hmm. And a nucleus, again, is kind of, I've always thought of as the brain of our cells. That's where the DNA is stored, as I understand it. It's what sends out messages. And so it almost feels like this hive sort of organism within a single cell. Like all these different nucleuses that are living together and moving it around and whatnot. Does that seem accurate or not really?
Honestly, that sort of thing is not really right or wrong, like the way that do you know what I mean? Like it's what you're saying is not wrong. It's not how I think of it, but it's not wrong. There's actually a really interesting paper, and I wish I could remember the author, basically talking about multicellularity in general. And it's nebulous. What is and isn't multicellular? We're drawing the line in the sand, and there are things on either side of that line that are maybe it has surprising complexity despite being technically single-celled. And in some cases, very complex, large colonial organisms the size of animals that can move around. And so it's, what does multicellular even mean? Most people exclude slime molds, but you could include them because of the nuclei thing. They've dissolved all their cell walls, so they're not putting anything in between those nuclei. But like you said, having more than one nucleus is not a typical, that's a difficult sentence though, because anyone watching this is excited about mushrooms, and most mushrooms that you've seen have two nuclei, at least at some point. It's like a feature of fungi, but most things you think of as one nucleus, one organism as far as a cell goes, a single cell.
Probably it's more accurate to say it's not typical for us and how we normally think of things. I think about when I teach kids about like, what is a normal life cycle? And we're like, oh, well, you're born, you look like you're adult, and you just grow up. But if you actually take all the living thing, at least animals, the majority of animals go through metamorphosis. That seems weird to us, but in the grand scheme of things, that's actually more normal, but it's not our perspective. So that probably makes it harder for me to understand what's going on with slime molds too, because it's just so alien from my perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's genuinely unique. The large enough to see without a microscope and only one cell, that is not really found anywhere else, especially the fruit bodies, because they don't form multicellular fruit bodies. Those fruit bodies are all basically just transformed the entire plasmodium through like drying and through, I don't know exactly, like the mitochondria come in and they deposit calcium along all of these like tubes that form. It's like this whole crazy process, but it does not involve cells. It involves one cell reforming its enormous one cell into a giant or into hundreds of little fruit bodies. And then all the nuclei become the spores. And then they go out as individual nuclei and start the whole process over again.
That's just crazy.
Wow.
I think I need to start. I think at least for slime molds, I need to think about cells differently. Because when I teach about cells, I have to teach kids, cells are like Legos. You have one brick, that's one cell, and you put it
Yeah.
together, you make this whole thing.
This
But
is
it
not.
almost sounds like within the slime mold, the slime, like inside the cell itself is all the Legos, and the one cell is made up of a ton of Legos. It's just so different.
It's like the Legos can kind of melt.
Yeah,
You know?
it's so weird.
It's genuinely unique. It's not, this mode of living doesn't appear anywhere else. So it is genuinely weird. You're allowed to think it's weird because it's a thing that you don't get to see. Even a lot of the features of plants are in other kingdoms, surprisingly more than you would think.
In fairness, plants are weird. Like, there's the whole alternation
They're
of
super
generations, which I get with like ferns, where you see the two different looking, the gametospore and the sporophyte. But it happens in trees too, and I
And
don't
ferns are so
understand that.
prehistoric. I always think of ferns as like the prehistoric plants, right? Like,
Yeah,
they're real
exactly. I mean, nature's just weird, which is why I love it. How do these single-celled organisms, these slime modes, how do they move? I've heard it's like this kind of like pulsating movement.
Yeah, sure. So what they do is, do you ever have like a carton of milk or orange juice and it's mostly empty? You push it on the table, and
Yeah,
then it stops, but then it kind of goes like a little bit more from the inertia of the liquid.
yeah.
Okay, so the slime mold pumps the juice in one direction, and then when it rushes back, it uses the actomyosin system to freeze it or gelatinize it to a certain extent so that it controls the direction. So it uses inertia, like it pulls back and then it lets it go forward, but then it stops it from going backwards. So it's like slowly inches forward. But there's also some evidence that at least some slime molds have cytoskeletal elements that actually come out of the membrane, their cell membrane. And then, of course, they cover themselves in slime, like actual slime. Like they look like slime, but they're also covered in slime that you maybe don't necessarily see, but it's there. And that slime has all of these. I don't know how to describe this. I don't know, maybe like thousands and thousands of tiny little legs almost. I read a little bit about this. It's the kind of thing where I don't think we're certain exactly how it works yet. And this kind of research is not common. Most slime mold research is, this is a new species, what's the phylogeny, what is it related to, that sort of thing. Looking at structures and how they move and all of that is just much less, I don't know, popular. Pharmaceutical stuff too is I think probably popular because there's a lot of metabolites. Like wolf's milk has something like 99 separate metabolites that we've found, and some of them seem to be useful against cancer. They're antimicrobial. Do you know wolf's milk? Are you familiar with
I don't know.
I feel like I've heard it, and I don't know why it's triggering
It's just
in
like
my brain.
little pink blobs on a log, and when you poke them, they kind of explode with some juice. But if you let them mature, they just turn into little puffballs, which is really interesting in itself because they're not related to anything that's a puffball. They developed it convergently. They don't even form out of cells. Fungal puffballs are multicellular. So they just invented puffballs. You know, evolution invented it multiple times without discussing it. And that,
Like,
and
hey,
I,
this
that
works.
amuses me.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Well, that's actually the thing about forming fruit bodies happens all over the place. In some cases, very similarly, which is part of where the confusion with slime molds comes, because a lot of organisms are labeled as slime molds simply because they aggregate and form fruit bodies. But that's just a thing that everyone does. It's just a good idea. So it's just going to keep showing up. It even shows up in bacteria. There's an entire kingdom, if you will, of bacteria that kind of like hunt in packs, like little bacterial wolves. But then they come together and they form. And sometimes if you're looking for slime molds, you can find these, but they're very small. So you have to have really good magnification to see them.
It makes me think there's this joke on the internet always goes around like, oh, yep, that turned into a crab again. Because the crab form was so good that it evolved independently multiple times. Yeah. And that's kind of like what fruiting bodies are. But like you said, it's so good. All these unrelated things created it. Yeah.
Like aggregating fruiting bodies are really just common, much more common and widespread than crabs.
Absolutely.
It's just like, it's a solution, you know?
That's just awesome. So they're moving it this way, and it amazes me how tiny the branches can be and how they can move in so many directions at once, at least some of the slime molds I've seen. And then they're moving because they're looking for food, and what exactly are they eating? And it's probably worth clarifying, too. We're talking about slime molds as, they do this, but we're talking about this huge variety of things, and so we're speaking a lot of times of generalizations or about what has been studied.
But there's probably exceptions.
But there's exceptions. Other things do other stuff. It'd be like saying, every single bird does this. That's not entirely accurate. But what are these things eating?
I think I could simplify that real quick. There are lots of organisms called slime molds. Some of them probably shouldn't be, but any slime mold that you see with your eyeballs is going to be an amoebozoan, specifically a plasmodial slime mold from a single branch. There are lots of microscopic organisms that are called slime molds, but you won't, unless you're really looking for them, you're not going to find them. So if you see a slime mold, or if you think about a slime mold, or if you talk about a slime mold, it's going to be pretty much this one genuinely similar group of organisms that all share a common ancestor. So it's sort of like the terminology is more confusing than the reality, I guess. What they eat, they mostly eat bacteria, but it is species dependent, and some of them seem to live almost entirely on algae, and they have been discovered accumulating algae and not digesting it. So who knows what's happening there? The algae lives inside of their cytoplasm, and I don't know, like theoretically, there could be some kind of
symbiotic relationship,
right?
mutualistic.
Yeah, but we don't know.
Yeah,
but they eat what they find, like a goat. They just eat whatever. And so they'll eat each other if they're small enough. Generally, what they do is they clone themselves a bunch, like a regular microbe. But then once they reach a certain density, they either just become a plasmodium, which is like the asexual strains, or they would have to meet another slime mold with the right mating type, and then they would squeeze together. But because they're all clones, it's like a big mad dash where everyone who's the same slime tries to fuse with everyone else who's the other slime, and then they all fuse together. But if anyone's not one of those two slimes, it just gets eaten. And if anyone doesn't pair up, it gets eaten. Because what are you doing? You might as well be food if you're not going to get married. And then they all become a big thing. So it's a bit confusing because it's like they do aggregate, but not in the same way that a lot of other like non-amoebozoa. Well, actually, there's also amoebozoans. Like you said, the exceptions are everywhere. Amoebozoa has like 4 or 5 different types of slime mold in it, but all of the ones that you're going to see are in that one group. I've lost track at this point of what I'm even. What did you ask?
Well, what they eat, which I think you're getting at. So they're eating bacteria,
right.
They're eating each other.
But very few that we know of eat mushrooms, and it's spectacular because generally slime molds do not do what fungus do. Like they're not digesting things with enzymes externally. They're eating things like you and me. Like they're literally putting their body around it amoeba style and making a tiny little stomach inside of their body and digesting it.
It reminds me of a white blood cell, how I was taught they destroy.
It's just like a white blood cell. And white blood cells are somewhat similar to amoebozoans because we're very closely related. And, the amoebas that they have, amoebas at the base of animals, actually, and at the base of fungi are very similar to amoebozoans. They're also floppy. They have like a skeleton, but then the part of their body that they put out there is all just like flopping about.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely like the planty ones are kind of like stiff, and the animal-y side is kind of like floppy, but it's just concentrated mostly in that amoebozoan kingdom. Oh, right, mushrooms. So there's Bidamia, Physarum, Polycephalum, sometimes Fulgoseptica, and a lot of these are all like, there's other ones, but they're all in kind of a similar area evolution-wise. But then there's exceptions, and some of those are very interesting. Like you were talking about chocolate tube slime mold. That one is very difficult to identify, even with a microscope. That genus is tough. Mm-hmm. But there's one that it just kind of falls over. It just kind of dangles instead of standing up. And that one you can identify. And that one is called Staminaria longa, although it is probably just a staminitis. Like molecular data indicates it's probably just in staminitis, but it's not like entirely clear right now. But that one eats mushrooms, and that one's a problem. It comes into mushroom grows. It's been like, I've read papers about farms in China where it just shows up and eats like all of their mushrooms. And sometimes people are growing mushrooms. Like I used to talk to people growing just in their house, like in bins and stuff. And they would have a slime mold in there, and almost always it's fine. It doesn't. Slime molds don't generally eat mushrooms. So like people they'll toss their whole bin of oysters or whatever because they're like, oh, it's got this kind of contamination. But if you just leave it alone, and then you could just pull the fruit bodies right out, and they're non toxic. So. But if it's Staminaria longa, it's just like basically the end of the world because, when they move around, they shed amoebas. Uh-huh. And then they also and then some of those amoebas insist, and they're very, very hardy. And it just sort of like little bits of it will go off and kind of wander off. Like it sort of is constantly making redundancies. So it's just difficult to get rid of them. The spores are flying around in the air. The amoeba is just wandering off. I was reading a paper where they were like, we sterilized it and we had the airflow wasn't going in from the outside, and it was a clean room, but they just got in anyway. And they're just in the air, and they just got in. And normally they're fine. They'll just grow on your stuff, and then it's no big deal. But sometimes you're unlucky. They don't eat plants or animals. They do kill insects sometimes, and
swingtails. Yep.
Yeah, they'll kill mites and stuff. Like, no, I don't know if it's on purpose. I mean, who's to say? but they'll smother them. And they
Now,
get eaten by them too. So it's like, I wonder if it's an evolutionary adaptation to smother mites, or if it's just purely an accident of just being a big sloppy blob, and mites are not very smart.
I have so many wonderful mental images through all of this. Like, I can't even keep up. I can't even.
I want to know, when they're eating things that are bigger, like mushrooms,
Yeah.
are they doing external digestion, or is it still
that's the only time that I'm aware that they do that. Yeah, they kind of cover the mushroom, like you said, because I think you were describing it. They cover the mushroom and they digest it, like similar to how a fungus would, except that they can move on when they're done. Although they usually don't, because a mushroom is a ton of food for a slime mold. So they generally just fruit right on the mushroom.
And that's exactly what I saw. It took like a week. And then it fruited, and it covered almost the entire log. It was amazing.
It's so much food. It's like it doesn't. Well, that's the thing. Some of these Physarum polycephalum, the largest one, of course, was like 40-something pounds, which is insane. But it's possible that they get bigger, and we just haven't, because Physarum polycephalum will fill an entire log, and it's impossible to weigh it because you can't. The log is there, or the dirt or whatever. But like, we don't know how big they get. They could get really big. I was actually talking to a guy who said that they had a fulgoseptic in the lab that got so big that like one end of it diverged genetically from the other end. Like, it was
weird.
Like they weren't,
and it was
like,
still a single cell.
Yeah.
Are we sure
Although
these things aren't from space?
Yeah.
These things are
That's
aliens.
amazing.
No, they could. You know what? People say that, but yeah, no, I am sure, because we know how they evolved, and it goes way back further than that.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
So cool.
Like, did they ultimately? Did it all come from space? Probably.
Yeah.
Because that's where all of the organic molecules are up on the rocks, all that red dust from all the radiation that's transforming all of those. Yeah, that stuff probably fell down here and got down into some water. And so ultimately, yeah, but slime molds definitely, they're part of the whole thing. They're not alien, even though they seem alien. They're closer to us than plants, and they are in some ways more similar. Like, I think they're the only other macroscopic mobile organism other than animals. Like, they move around. And the big ones they're not as big as the biggest animals, but they can move a fair amount, like all the way up a tree or something.
And I saw that too, crawling up a tree, which is so cool. If our listeners want to go out and find some slime molds, do you have any recommendations for, this is where you should look, and how do you know it's a slime mold and not, say, like a fungi or something like that?
So you guys are in a great position with all the lakes, because you want to be near water. That's where in my opinion, that's where I find them the most. I mean, you can find them in the desert, but you have to go searching through rotten cactus, and you probably need a microscope. So yeah, like rotten logs is the easiest, especially right after rain. I think people who look for mushrooms have a tendency to maybe wait a day after rain to give it some time. Slime molds don't need time. They will continue the next day, but they will just start immediately. So you can just go. And a lot of times they'll start fruiting in the morning right before the sun comes up. So if you go really early, statistically, you would be seeing more unusual forms, because they can very rapidly change into their mature form. So a lot of slimes, people rarely see their immature forms, and some of them are very interesting and colorful. But yeah, I would say near water, after rain, rotten wood, but almost, unless it's freezing cold or extremely dry, you can pretty much find them anywhere. Like you were talking about mulch. I saw the biggest slime mold I've ever seen was at a McDonald's in some mulch. They grow anywhere, and if you know where to look or how to look, I think like a little flashlight, it's kind of counterintuitive during the day, but it really does kind of light up the little crevices when you're looking at wood. And a lot of these are iridescent.
Wow.
Which is interesting, because they're iridescent from basically like a prismatic effect within the kind of the shell around the spores, which is called the sporotheca or the peridium. And it's like very, very thin membrane layers, and there's like air trapped in there, and that's why so you can sometimes catch them by shining.
That's good to know. I didn't know that.
It helps to just kind of sit and look, like almost not look, direct your eyes at the places that you think there might be slime molds, which is almost like if you're a beginner, you want to find a big rotten log.
Yeah, I saw like 5 or 6 different slime molds on the same log.
Yeah, that's what you'll find. If you find one, you'll almost always find more. And they are seasonal, but you can go, some of them are not seasonal really. But if you go on iNaturalist, you can actually look at where they peak and what has been found in the area. Basically, all the common slime molds that you hear people talk about that you see, you're going to be able to find, because a lot of them are it's the perfect spot. Temperate, forest, moisture. That's where the most slime molds are, the most diversity of slime molds.
And you mentioned iNaturalist. For our listeners that want to identify the slime molds they're finding or learn more about slime molds, do you have any recommended resources?
Yeah, there's a Z Frank video on slime molds, and that's fantastic. I think it's called The Smartest Slime. And he
Okay.
has one on dictosteels, which are also called slime molds, and they're like the sibling to the ones that we're talking about, but they're always microscopic and they're always multicellular when they form,
Hmm.
when they aggregate and everything. So they're like very dramatically different, even though they're very close. But you won't be seeing those for the most part. So watch the Smartest Slime one. And then Magic Mixies. That's a video from 1932, I think. It's like 10 minutes long, and it's fantastic. It's
Really?
still good.
No,
This
I was
That's
going to say
amazing.
1932. Wow, that holds
Yeah,
up
no,
still.
it's still good. Still, he was right. I mean, like some of the terminology is kind of fanciful. We don't think of things that way anymore, right? The narrator is thinking of things like plant and animal, like which is how in the 30s you would be thinking of all life. Is it a plant or is it an animal?
Yeah.
But like other than just like that kind of stuff, like everything he's saying is legit. It's really good, and there's good footage. But iNaturalist and the Facebook group are the two best resources, I would say.
Are
learning
there
about slime
books?
molds.
Are there field guides for slime
There
molds?
are, and they are very difficult to find and difficult to use. And I don't know if I would recommend them.
Okay.
They are invaluable. They're excellent, but you're just starting out. Not really. Like Sarah Lloyd has a book, which isn't a field guide, but is a really good beginner book. And I'm trying to remember, I can't remember what it's called. It's got like a cute name too, so I should remember it, but I can't. Sarah Lloyd is generally helpful. Like she's on iNaturalist and she does answer questions. So that's also a resource. But people on iNaturalist, there's people that they're like me that are just excited and they'll answer questions. And then the Facebook group is the same thing. And then I think it's youmycetozoa.org. It lists up to date species and genus names, and it lists all of the varieties and the past names with links to all PDFs of all of the original paperwork, even going back to the 17 or the 6 of when it was first discovered, and et cetera. And it's really useful resource when you just can't find stuff. I've actually identified slimes by just systematically going through and reading every single PDF, and in one giant, I was like, I know it's this genus, just go down the list until I found it. And it wasn't in any books, so that's the only way I would have found it.
That is amazing. Well, thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your passion for slime molds. It's truly incredible. It helped me understand them just a little bit better. But like you said, I think they're always going to be a little bit inconceivable to me because their life is so different. But I truly appreciate you coming on and talking to me about them. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it also. I had a great time.
Next time, we talk to Dr. Narosha Murugan about her research on how slime molds learn about their environment and make decisions without a brain.